"You don't belong here." The words didn't fall quietly. They sliced through the Ritz-Carlton ballroom like glass breaking on marble. It was the billionaire's wife in the red dress, crimson silk, clinging, hemline sharp above the knee, lips painted to match. She didn't whisper. She projected, like an actress playing for the back row. Heads turned, glasses paused halfway to lips. The jazz quartet in the corner hit a wrong note. She wasn't pointing at a waiter. She wasn't calling out staff. She was speaking to the woman in the orange gown. The black woman sitting alone at a crystal-lit table, posture calm, hair pulled into a sleek knot that refused a single stray strand. Her dress wasn't sequined, wasn't screaming for attention. It was flame-colored satin, flowing yet restrained, a quiet blaze. She had been invisible until now. The red dress leaned closer, her laugh pitched high enough to echo off the chandeliers. "Sweetheart, this is the Gala's front row, reserved for names that matter. You must be lost." Phones shifted in hands. A murmur rose like static across velvet walls. The orange gown did not answer. She lifted her glass of champagne, the liquid catching light, and drank as if no insult had touched her air. But the room felt it. Everyone did. The insult wasn't just a comment. It was a verdict, delivered loud enough to mark territory. Guests smirked. A few exchanged knowing looks. Somewhere near the back, a young reporter tapped his phone camera alive, whispering, "This might be bigger than it looks." The woman in red tilted her head, emboldened by silence. "I've seen this before. Staff slipping into empty seats to taste luxury for a night. Security should have handled it already." A gasp flickered through the front row. A man chuckled nervously, pretending it was a joke. But the sting was real. A visible line had been drawn in the ballroom who belonged, and who didn't. The woman in orange did not flinch. Her calm unsettled more than protest ever could. She set her glass down, hands folded with surgical precision. Her eyes lifted, steady and unyielding. Not to the woman in red, but past her toward the chandelier, burning above them both. And in that silence, the air bent. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Now, back to the woman in the orange gown, because in the next few minutes, her silence will cost an empire $4.1 billion. She didn't rise. She didn't answer. The woman in the orange gown simply sat straight-backed, composed, eyes fixed on the ballroom center stage, as if the insult hadn't grazed her. But the silence wasn't empty. It pressed down on the room heavier than the chandeliers above, and everyone felt it. The billionaire's wife in red mistook the silence for weakness. Her smile widened, lips curved like a blade. "See? She knows. That's why she won't speak. She shouldn't even be here." The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was sharp. It cut from table to table. A couple clinked glasses as if to dismiss the scene, but their eyes lingered. Judgment travels fast in a room designed for spectacle. The orange gown remained still, not stiff-controlled. Her hair was drawn back tight, a style chosen not for vanity but for discipline. Every line of her posture said one thing: this is not new. Because it wasn't. At 22, she had stood in a marble lobby in Paris where a concierge asked her if she was with the catering staff. At 29, in Chicago, she was told the VIP section was reserved for real investors. Every memory burned the same. Exclusion delivered in public, dignity tested in silence. And now, decades later, the same script was being played again, only this stage was hers. Across the ballroom, a young journalist leaned against a column, phone angled discreetly, whispering to his mic. "This isn't just gossip, this is a story. Keep rolling." Meanwhile, the red dress pivoted, addressing the nearest cluster of guests. "Honestly, this is embarrassing for the hotel. Someone should have checked credentials. A seat like this isn't for—" She paused, eyes flicking up and down, landing on the orange gown like a stamp of disapproval. "For that." Gasps traveled. One woman's hand flew to her mouth. A man shifted uncomfortably in his tuxedo. Another voice whispered, "Did she really just say that?" Still, the orange gown didn't move. She reached for her glass again, slow, deliberate, and placed it back on the linen. The act was ordinary, but in a room drunk on opulence, her restraint became extraordinary. The reporter muttered again, almost reverent now, She's not reacting. She's letting the room react for her. And they were. Eyes turned sharper, murmurs grew heavier. The air, once perfumed with champagne and roses, now carried something sour bias exposed, raw, and undeniable. The billionaire's wife didn't see it. She was too busy enjoying her stage. "Security," she called out, her voice slicing through the music. "Remove her before this turns into a circus." The gala shifted. Waiters paused mid-step. The hotel manager at the edge of the stage stiffened. A spotlight of shame had been switched on, and everyone was standing in its glare. And through it all, the woman in orange still hadn't spoken a word. The words, "security," had barely left her lips when a man in a black tuxedo appeared at the edge of the ballroom. The Ritz-Carlton event manager, silver hair slicked back, headset tucked discreetly behind his ear, moved quickly, but not confidently. His steps betrayed hesitation. He had heard the tone, seen the gesture, and now every eye in the ballroom was waiting for him to act. The woman in the red dress greeted him with a triumphant tilt of her chin. "Finally, please escort her out. She's taken a reserved seat. It's humiliating for the hotel." The manager's glance shifted toward the orange gown. She hadn't moved. She hadn't spoken. She simply rested one hand on the linen, the other still curled loosely around the stem of her untouched glass. Her gaze met his, steady as stone. No plea, no defense. Just silence that demanded he think carefully before taking his next step. He cleared his throat. "Madam, may I see your invitation card?" His tone tried to stay neutral, but the request itself carried weight. In a gala built on hierarchy, asking for proof was already an accusation. The woman in red leaned closer, voice dripping with condescension. "Don't waste your time. I've seen her type at enough events. They dress up, slip past ushers, and sit where they don't belong. Do your job." That phrase, "do your job," landed hard. Guests shifted uncomfortably. A woman at the next table whispered to her husband, "She's not even letting him speak." The husband replied low, "This feels wrong. She hasn't done anything." Near the back, the young journalist steadied his phone. His whisper turned sharper now. "They're trying to erase her presence with protocol." The manager's hand hovered uncertainly, as if reaching for the orange gown's place card. But before he touched it, the woman in orange moved just enough to place her fingertips on the card first. Her movement was slow, deliberate, the kind of gesture that turned the act of stillness into authority. Her voice didn't come, not yet, but her eyes held him in place. And the ballroom noticed. A hush spread, pulling the music down to a hum. Waiters froze mid-pour. Even the red dress faltered for a second, though pride quickly reloaded in her smile. "Sir," she pressed, louder this time, making sure the crowd could hear. "She doesn't belong. Remove her before this becomes a scene." But it already was. The scene had begun the moment her first insult hit the air. Now it was unraveling in real time, under chandeliers and watchful eyes, with phones capturing every flicker of bias and every breath of silence. And still, the woman in orange had yet to speak a single word. The ballroom waited. The manager's hand hovered above the table card like it was a trigger, but the woman in the orange gown didn't flinch. She didn't rush to defend herself, didn't raise her voice, didn't even frown. Instead, she placed her glass down gently, the faint clink louder than any protest could have been. Her stillness unsettled the air, because in a room where power usually roared, she chose not to roar at all. The billionaire's wife leaned in, mistaking the quiet for surrender. "See? Not even a word. She knows she's out of place." But the silence wasn't surrender. It was weight. It was presence. Guests who had been snickering moments earlier now stared, caught in a discomfort they couldn't name. Why wasn't she fighting back? Why wasn't she scrambling to justify herself? At a table nearby, a woman in pearls whispered to her friend, "If it were me, I'd be crying." Her friend shook her head. "That's why it's not you. Look at her. She's not giving them anything." The journalist in the corner whispered into his phone mic, voice almost reverent now. "She's holding the entire room with silence. You can feel it. It's heavier than the music." The red dress didn't hear or pretended not to. She raised her glass in mock salute. "Let's toast to keeping these events exclusive," she announced, her laughter ringing sharp as crystal. It wasn't just arrogance. It was performance. She wanted the crowd on her side, but the crowd was shifting. People weren't laughing anymore. They were watching. The manager cleared his throat again. uncomfortable in his role as enforcer. His fingers brushed the edge of the table card, but the woman in orange moved a fraction just enough to cover it fully with her palm. No words, no fight, just ownership. The gesture landed harder than a shouted argument. In that moment, a memory pressed into her mind like a scar. She was 16, standing in a Charlotte hotel lobby, told by a clerk, "This area is for guests only." She had been dressed in her Sunday best, clutching her purse with trembling hands. They didn't listen then. They had pushed her out onto the sidewalk like she was dirt. Now, years later, the script tried to repeat. Only this time, she wasn't the one trembling. Her silence wasn't empty. It was filled with decades of refusal. Refusal to bend, refusal to break, refusal to be erased. And though her lips hadn't parted once, the entire ballroom was beginning to hear her. It started with a glow. From the far corner, a red recording light blinked alive on a slim black phone. The young journalist, barely 30, angled his camera low, his lips moving almost silently. "If you're watching this, remember what you see. Remember how it started with one sentence." A ripple of awareness passed through the ballroom. A woman in emerald silk elbowed her husband, nodding toward the lens. He frowned, whispering back, "Careful, they'll throw him out too." But the journalist didn't stop. He zoomed in on the table, on the contrast, the red dress standing tall, sharp and loud, the orange gown seated, silent but unshaken. Two women, two worlds, colliding in real time. "Excuse me," a voice suddenly carried from another table. A guest, middle-aged, silver cufflinks glinting, raised his glass halfway. "Why does she need to prove anything? She's seated. That's proof enough." The billionaire's wife spun, her laugh clipped and metallic. "Oh, please, you don't know these people. They sneak in, pretend to belong. This is exactly why standards matter." Her words ricocheted across the chandeliers, brittle but loud. And this time, they didn't land clean. Gasps echoed, whispers hissed. A woman near the stage shook her head sharply, muttering, "Did she just say these people?" The manager froze. His hand hovered mid-air, caught between obedience and doubt. He could feel the weight of 100 eyes, waiting to see which side he stood on. The orange gown didn't move. She hadn't spoken once, but her stillness was rewriting the script. The aggressor looked frantic. The target looked composed. The crowd was beginning to choose who they believed. The journalist's voice whispered into the mic again. "Steady now. This isn't silence. This is strategy. Watch how the room bends." Another phone rose, then another. Guests angled discreetly at first, then less discreetly, their screens catching the tension, the imbalance, the arrogance on full display. The billionaire's wife noticed. Her smile cracked, then reloaded sharper. She raised her chin. "Record all you want. She'll be gone in 5 minutes. Security is already on its way." But her voice quivered at the edges. Because even she could feel it, the room wasn't laughing with her anymore. It was listening, recording, storing every word like evidence. And still, the woman in orange said nothing. The ballroom's tension thickened, like smoke clinging to velvet curtains. The red dress stood taller now, feeding on her own echo. And then, the manager finally moved. His hand swept across the table, lifting the place card beneath the orange gown's palm. He held it high, his voice carrying like a verdict. "This is invalid. You are not on tonight's registry." A collective gasp rattled crystal flutes. Guests leaned closer, trying to read the card from afar. The journalist's phone zoomed in, capturing every syllable. The woman in orange didn't rise, didn't snatch the card back. She simply folded her hands in her lap, eyes never leaving the manager's. The billionaire's wife clapped once, mocking applause. "Finally, thank you. Now, remove her before she embarrasses herself further." But the manager wasn't done. He placed the card flat against his palm, almost like evidence in a trial. His tone sharpened. "Madam, this table is reserved for our highest profile donors. I can't allow you to remain seated. Please cooperate, or security will intervene." From the third row, a man in a tuxedo called out, "She's been sitting calmly this whole time. Why are you treating her like a trespasser?" The manager's jaw tightened. He looked at the man, then back at the orange gown. Because calm doesn't equal credibility, and silence doesn't equal access. The words cracked across the ballroom. They weren't just procedural, they were personal. They carried the sting of accusation, the certainty of dismissal. The red dress smirked, circling the table like a victor savoring the moment. You hear that? Even management agrees. You don't belong. Not here, not at this level. Phones tilted higher now, no longer hidden. Screens glowed like tiny spotlights, aimed squarely at arrogance. The orange gown inhaled once, slow and deliberate, but she still didn't speak. Instead, she adjusted her chair by an inch, a gesture so controlled it felt like defiance in disguise. The journalist whispered into his mic. That's the moment. He said calm doesn't equal credibility. That phrase will live on the internet by morning. A murmur ran through the crowd, louder than the quartet's uneasy notes. Guests weren't neutral anymore. Some frowned openly, others whispered their outrage. A woman near the bar hissed under her breath. She hasn't done a thing. This is prejudice dressed up as policy. But the red dress only laughed harder, her voice echoing under chandeliers. Escort her out. Do it now. She's already ruined the night. And as the manager nodded grimly, signaling to the hotel's security team, the balance of the ballroom began to tilt toward breaking point. The ballroom had gone still, like a stage waiting for its final act. The manager's signal was enough. 2 security staff in dark suits moved from the back wall, their earpieces glinting under chandelier light. The billionaire's wife stepped aside with a satisfied smirk, making space for them like a queen clearing her court. One guard reached for the table card still clutched in the manager's hand. The other leaned toward the orange gown. Ma'am, you need to stand. She didn't move. Her stillness was sharper than any resistance. The red dress scoffed, her voice dripping with triumph. She won't stand because she doesn't belong. Just take her out. And then it happened. The manager snapped the card in half deliberate, loud, the sound of paper splitting echoing across glass and marble. He tossed the pieces onto the table, as though shredding not just a name but a place in the room itself. This is invalid, he repeated, louder now. You have no seat here. Gasps scattered like sparks. A woman near the stage covered her mouth. A man at the bar muttered, he really tore it up. Phones rose higher, catching every angle. The journalist whispered fiercely into his mic, they destroyed her card. This isn't policy, it's humiliation. The orange gown remained steady, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She didn't look at the torn card. She looked at the manager, her gaze steady as stone. But the assault wasn't done. The second guard reached for the clutch resting on the back of her chair. He lifted it, held it in his palm, then turned toward the manager for approval. Check it, the manager ordered. Make sure it's not stolen. That single word stolen burned through the ballroom. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some gasping outright. The billionaire's wife laughed, tipping her glass. You see? Exactly what I said. Pretenders always get caught. The guard opened the clutch. Inside, a black titanium card caught the light sleek, unmistakable, heavy with power. Instead of recognition, the manager sneered. Fake. They make these online now. He tossed it back onto the table with a clang that seemed to reverberate louder than the band's next note. A murmur of disbelief spread. Someone at the back whispered, That's a centurion. You don't fake those. Another guest nodded, frowning deeply. This is going too far. The red dress leaned in for the kill. Call the police. Let her explain to them. Maybe jail will teach her where she doesn't belong. The word police landed like a hammer. Gasps broke into open protest. A man in a tuxedo barked, This is insane, she hasn't done a thing. A woman near the bar shouted, Stop, this is harassment. But the manager was already pulling his phone from his jacket. Dispatch, this is Ritz Carlton Gala. We have an intruder. Possible fraud. Request immediate response. And as his voice carried across the room, every guest, every camera, every eye in that ballroom knew the line had been crossed. The night wasn't just an insult anymore. It was a public execution of dignity. The manager's voice was still echoing into his phone. Possible fraud. Request immediate response, when the woman in the orange gown finally moved. Not abruptly, not with anger, just one precise motion. She reached for her clutch, lifted her own phone, and pressed a single button. Her voice, calm but cutting, carried farther than the manager's call. Activate withdrawal protocol. The room froze. Guests glanced at each other. Security hesitated. Even the billionaire's wife tilted her head, her smirk flickering. On the other end of the line, a woman's voice responded instantly, sharp, efficient, unwavering. Confirmed, ma'am. Divesting $4.1 billion from all Ritz-Carlton properties. Execution in progress. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. They fell into the ballroom like iron, heavy and irreversible. The journalist's whisper cracked with disbelief. Did you hear that? 4.1 billion. She's pulling billions out right now. Gasps swelled into full voices. A man at the bar muttered, "She's a shareholder?" A woman clutched her pearls, whispering, "No, more than that. She's in control." The billionaire's wife tried to laugh, but it rang hollow. Bluff, all of it. No one moves that kind of money with a phone call. But her eyes betrayed her, the quick dart, the flash of unease. The orange gown remained steady. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She simply set her phone flat on the linen. The line still open. The assistant's voice still audible. Phase 1 confirmed. Funds redirected. Media alerts prepared. The manager's own phone trembled slightly in his grip. He pulled it away from his ear, staring at the screen as if hoping dispatch could save him from the truth unraveling at his table. Security froze, uncertain now who exactly they were handling. The journalist whispered again, this time almost to himself. She just shifted the entire room with one sentence. The orange gown folded her hands, eyes calm, posture unbroken. She hadn't raised her voice once. Yet the ground beneath the Ritz-Carlton was already cracking, and for the first time all evening, the red dress lost her smile. The ballroom held its breath. The manager lowered his phone. The guard stepped back, uncertain now, their eyes darting between the woman in orange and the guests whose phones hovered like courtroom cameras. The billionaire's wife clutched her glass tighter, knuckles whitening. And then, the woman in the orange gown rose. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate, a single, unhurried motion that made the chandeliers seem to dim around her. The flame-colored satin cascaded to the floor, catching light like a quiet blaze. She placed one hand on the table, steady as stone, and spoke for the first time that evening. "You think I'm staff. You think I don't belong. You think silence is surrender." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It cut through the ballroom sharper than crystal shattering. Guests leaned forward, every syllable pulling them closer. Then she straightened fully, eyes sweeping across the tables, across the phones, across the woman in red who had mocked her. "I am the black CEO who owns a controlling stake in these hotels. Every chandelier above your head, every glass in your hand, every inch of this ballroom." She paused, letting the weight settle. "Exists because I allow it." Gasps erupted like thunder. The journalist nearly dropped his phone. Someone at the back shouted, "Oh my God." The billionaire's wife stumbled a half step, her smirk collapsing into silence. Her glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble. Red wine bled across the floor like a stain that couldn't be erased. The manager's face drained pale. His hand still held the torn place card, pieces trembling between his fingers. For the first time, he realized he hadn't destroyed paper, he had shredded proof of his own career. And the orange gown, no. The CEO stood unmoved. She let the silence stretch, her presence filling every corner of the ballroom. She didn't need to argue anymore. The truth had detonated, and the room itself was carrying the echo. The journalist's whisper cracked into awe. "She owns it. She owns all of this." Phones kept recording. Guests kept staring. And the red dress, once so loud, now had nothing left to say. The balance of the night had shifted completely. The ballroom cracked open. Gasps rolled into murmurs, murmurs into shouts. Guests rose from their chairs, half in disbelief, half in exhilaration. Phones hovered high like a forest of glowing witnesses. Every second was captured, every angle preserved. The manager's hand trembled around the torn card. His lips parted, but no words formed. He looked at the shredded pieces, as if they were fragments of his own career. Sweat gathered at his temples. His voice, when it finally broke free, came out brittle. This can't be real." The guard stepped back, their polished shoes scraping the marble. They had been ready to drag her out minutes ago. Now they couldn't even meet her eyes. One muttered to the other, "She runs the place." We touched her clutch. The second shook his head, face drained of color. And the red dress? The billionaire's wife? Her facade shattered. The confidence that had animated every gesture collapsed in a heartbeat. She tried to laugh, but it came out strangled, thin as broken glass. "You're lying. This is a trick. My husband, he knows everyone here. He would have told me." But the crowd wasn't listening to her anymore. A woman in emerald silk stood from her table. "We saw it. We heard the call. She's not bluffing." A man near the bar raised his phone higher. "This video is already live. Everyone knows who she is now." The journalist's voice cracked with awe as he narrated for his viewers. Ritz Carlton Gala witnesses confirm the black CEO just revealed she owns controlling stake. This is history unfolding. The manager stumbled back, his headset sliding loose from his ear. He turned toward the stage, searching for escape, but there was none. The eyes of the ballroom pinned him like a spotlight. Guests began clapping, hesitant at first. Then louder, like a wave gathering strength. Applause thundered through the chandeliers. It wasn't just celebration, it was judgment. Judgment against the arrogance, against the bias, against the public humiliation that had just imploded. The red dress shook her head violently, her earrings swaying. "No, you don't belong here. This night is ours." But her voice was drowned out. Applause rolled over her, heavy and relentless. Some guests cheered outright. Others shouted words that cut sharper than crystal. "Respect her. She owns this place. Justice right here, right now." "Oh." The billionaire's wife staggered, suddenly small in her crimson silk, her power crumbling like the shards of her broken glass still bleeding across the marble. And at the center of it all, the CEO stood calm, flame-colored satin rippling softly as though untouched by the chaos she had unleashed. The room had chosen. The applause hadn't faded when she reached for her phone again. No rush, no theatrics, just a calm tap, a connection reopened. "Status," she said, her voice cutting through the ballroom like a judge calling order. On the other end, her assistant's tone was crisp, undeniable. "Withdrawal complete. 4.1 billion liquidated from all Ritz-Carlton properties. Contracts flagged. Media brief ready for release." The room gasped as if the air had been punched from it. A screen near the stage intended for donor tributes suddenly blinked. Numbers rolled across it. Holdings, stakes, funds dissolving in real time. Guests craned their necks, jaws dropping. The manager stumbled back a step, his headset dangling uselessly. No, this can't." His voice broke before the sentence could finish. She turned her gaze on him, steady and merciless. "You tore my name in half. Consider your employment the same. Effective immediately. You're dismissed." His mouth fell open. Around him, murmurs exploded. Guests whispered, "She just fired him here, in the ballroom." Her eyes slid toward the guards. "And as for you, you touched what wasn't yours. You acted on arrogance, not evidence. Your badges are invalid. Security will escort you out." The guards froze, then lowered their heads, realization sinking heavy into their shoulders. Finally, she turned to the woman in the red dress, the billionaire's wife who had thrown every insult, who had weaponized the room. Now pale, trembling, voice caught in her throat. "You thought humiliation was power. You mistook silence for weakness. What you've just learned is that my silence is more expensive than your husband's empire." The woman staggered, hands shaking, her mouth opened, but no words came. Phones caught the moment. Every angle preserved her downfall immortalized in pixels. The CEO lifted her phone once more. "Mark every contract connected to tonight's gala. Terminate. Effective immediately." "Confirmed," came the assistant's reply. And just like that, deals worth millions evaporated. The Ritz, Carlton's walls seemed to groan under the weight of loss. Guests muttered in disbelief, some in shock, some in awe. The journalist's voice cracked with emotion as he narrated live. "She's dismantling them. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now, this is corporate justice in real time." The CEO set her phone down, hands folded once again, expression unshaken. She didn't need volume. She didn't need fury. She had just written the verdict and the world was watching it unfold. The ballroom was silent again, but it wasn't the silence of tension anymore. It was the silence of judgment delivered, of power revealed. The chandeliers glittered above, but the brightest light in the room came from the woman in the orange gown. Every eye fixed on her. Phone stayed raised, recording history. The billionaire's wife stood frozen in her crimson silk, trembling. The manager's headset lay forgotten on the marble floor. Security guards had stepped back, shadows of the power they once thought they held. The CEO let the silence breathe, let it stretch until the weight of it settled on every shoulder in the room. Then she spoke. "You thought I needed your approval to belong. You thought erasing my name from a card would erase me. You were wrong." Her voice carried, not loud, but absolute. It traveled across glass, velvet, and marble, sinking into every guest, every witness. "I don't need cameras to prove what happened here tonight. I am the result of every camera, every insult, every attempt to silence me. I am not the footage, I am the verdict." Gasps rippled. Someone clapped, then another. The applause swelled like thunder rolling across the ballroom, wave after wave until it shook the chandeliers themselves. The journalist's voice, trembling with awe, whispered into his mic. "She just ended it. That's the line. That's the one the world will remember." The CEO turned one last time toward the red dress, her words sharp as crystal. "Dignity does not ask permission, it defines the room." The billionaire's wife lowered her eyes, shoulders folding in defeat. No defense left, no laughter, only silence, the kind that cuts deeper than any insult. The CEO gathered her clutch, lifted her phone, and walked past the manager who once dared to tear her name. Guests parted like a tide, clearing her path. Some bowed their heads, some whispered blessings. All of them knew they had just seen something larger than scandal, something closer to justice itself. At the door, she paused. The marble floor still reflected her flame-colored gown, unshaken, unstoppable. She turned back once, her eyes sweeping across the room one final time. "Remember this moment," she said, because silence was never weakness. It was power waiting for the right stage. No. And with that, she left the Ritz-Carlton Gala in ruins, not by shouting, not by fighting, but by standing so firmly in her truth that the entire empire collapsed around her. The applause followed her out,